Hi, everyone. I'm Brooke Csuka, Outreach Archivist at the State Archives of North Carolina. In earlier sessions, we've discussed the basics on how to collect scans and oral history interviews from your community. And we've also talked about tips for storytelling and exhibits. So now let's pivot to some digital tools you can use to tell those stories or to help your audience connect with the stories that you've collected in new ways. I've prepared a quick overview of some of the digital storytelling tools available, but because this is an overview, it's going to feel pretty fast. I hope this will inspire you to explore some of these tools and others, and consider how you might use your collections with them. This list is not exhaustive, but it's a start. All the tools and applications here are free and or open source, but they may require some web hosting, meaning your images, audio, video needs to live somewhere online. But I do want to point out that because these tools are all free, they are subject to change over time. So depending on when you watch this session, just please keep that in mind. All right, so let's get started. There we go. I'm going to start with timelines. So these are going to be great for chronological narratives. Really consider things like histories of your organization. It could be a great way to highlight a series of moments that lead up to a historical event, or even to highlight change over time. I pulled two options for you today. The first is TimelineJS by NightLab. This was created by NightLab, which many of the tools you'll see today are, which is a free and open source tool. This tool creates an interactive, media-rich timeline, meaning that users can scroll through at their own pace, using the arrows on the side of the screen that you see there, or even click through the timeline at the bottom of the screen. And you can also incorporate photos, videos, and other media. This is surprisingly simple to use. You would just download their Google Sheets template, add your own text, photos, videos, and then connect it to TimelineJS by entering a link. And then presto, you've got the slideshow, which can be embedded into your own website, or it'll produce a link so you could share that online as well. Our second option is Timemapper by Open Knowledge Foundation Labs. And this looks pretty similar to the one we just saw. The timeline aspect of it actually is pulled from that open source coding for TimelineJS. But the nice thing about this is that it adds a mapping feature. And so this works much in the same way as TimelineJS does. You'll use their Google spreadsheet, fill in your information, and then connect it with Timemapper, and then publish it to your website or use the link they provide. But what's nice about this is it ties your story to time and place. So let's look at some other story mapping tools next. So these obviously are great for location-based narratives. Our first option is StorymapJS by NightLab, another NightLab product. Again, this allows users to tie their narrative story to place using maps. There are several visual styles for these maps. So this here is the watercolor version, but there are other options as well. Users can navigate through your story using the arrows. You see an arrow on the right side of the screen here, or they can dive deep into the map and click through that way. You'll need to use this. You'll need a free Google account. So if you already have Gmail, you've got access to this platform. Once you're logged in, the interface reminds me a lot of PowerPoint. Simple slide templates, which you can add text, videos, photos, and then of course a geographical point. So a simple address would work for that. You can also use StorymapJS to dive deep into artwork or historical maps. And to do that, you would select the gigapixel option when you log in. And that way, you wouldn't be using a modern map like we have here in this example, but you would be able to dive in close to different points on, say, that a historical map or another image. Another mapping option is History Pin. This also plots points on a map, but you can upload historical images to juxtapose with a current street view. So I'm going to try to play a screen recording here. Keep your eye on the building on the right side of the screen. And you can see as that slider goes, you can see the historical image juxtaposed, which with the modern version. This allows users to provide a caption or short description, and it's also great for crowdsourcing. Users can upload their own images and photos and add comments to your posts, so it's a really great way to build community engagement online. And before we move on to visual stories, I did want to point out one other option for you, ArcGIS. So that's spelled ARCGIS. I don't include it in the presentation because it's not free, but if you are part of a city or county government, you may already have access to this. And you just have to find out through that government to see what kind of options are available. But it's another mapping tool that's got a really great interface, and I hear folks really love to use it. So keep that one in mind if you may have access to that. So now we'll move on to visual stories, or basically, interactive, media-rich thematic storytelling through photographs and videos. So this can include things like a simple PowerPoint presentation, right? We'll dive into a couple options here. My favorite option here is Adobe Express, formerly Adobe Spark. Some of you may have used it before. Adobe Express is meant to compete with Canva in that it offers templates, images. You can use it to build all sorts of things. But what's really great about Adobe Express is that you can use it to create a website, which Canva doesn't do, to my knowledge. And that's what I recommend for digital exhibits. I'm going to play now a screen grab or screen recording from my phone because Express utilizes responsive web design, meaning it can determine whether on your computer or on your phone and optimize views accordingly. So that's why you see it in this sort of orientation. If we were looking at this on a computer, the photos would be in a different orientation. The captions would appear a little differently. This is what they call their glide show, which is a pretty slick way to incorporate labels and captions with images and video. I find Adobe Express to be incredibly intuitive and easy to use. You do need a free account to log in. And I have heard some folks who had been using this in the past, I think with maybe an enterprise account, and they did lose some of their access. I will say I tested this just last week, created a completely new free account, was able to create a test website. So I do believe this is still free for folks to use. And it's a really great option if you want to explore it. Once you publish your web page, Adobe can host it for you, and currently that is free. Or you can embed it into an existing website using the code they provide. Another option is Juncture from JSTOR Labs, and especially if you're considering JSTOR to host some of your digital assets, if you've done a community scanning day, you might want to consider this. This creates more complex narratives than Adobe Express that we just showed you, but similarly, it combines text, images, and video. It also allows for panning, zooming, image sliders, and other applications that we've seen, like some of the timeline or mapping options. And I'm going to play a screen recording here too, so you can see how as you scroll through and you read the text on the left side of the screen, the media on the right will change and update. So you could stop here, watch this recording, and then continue reading. And you'll see, again, the media changes on the right side of the screen. This does require a free GitHub account. And so I have found this application to be a little bit more difficult than Adobe Express. It's probably better suited to folks who have, some familiarity with coding. But that said, Juncture provides a template to build on, so you're never building code from scratch. So it's still something to consider when you're building an online exhibit like this. Going a little bit more complex, I'm going to talk about Scalar here. This is great for long form or academic scholarly works. This is often used in digital humanities. Again, it provides options for you to display text, video, data visualizations. You can import content from YouTube and other platforms, and even content from Internet Archive and other repositories. This is definitely a bigger, for more complex storytelling. Most of the time when we're talking about digital exhibits, we're talking about, smaller, more concise storytellings. But this example here, the Black Quotidian, that project was created to show that Black history lasts for longer than just a month, right? It's 365 days a year. So that gives you a sense of the kind of scale Scalar can work with. It does require you to create an account using an email affiliated with an academic or cultural heritage institution. But once you've got that account going, they have a great user's guide to get you through. Going back to something a little simpler now, I've got JuxtaposeJS as an option here. This is a neat tool to compare two different images. You can use an interactive mode, which gives the audience control over the slider you see in the middle. The user is able to drag the slider to the right or to the left to see the image. But it can also create a GIF or a GIF, an animated image that you can show on social media. You'll just want to make sure your images are in alignment as best you can. It's very simple to use. You'd go to the JuxtaposeJS webpage, upload your images or provide URLs to your images, and then click publish. All right, let's talk about audio recordings for the folks who are doing oral history interviews and that sort of thing. My first option is SoundCiteJS. This helps bring your written text to life. It can add emotion and context to your work. It's a way to embed audio into a web page or a blog post, other digital documents using HTML. So you see in this example, there's a sort of a button in the middle of the screen that says the crowd was as large. And if you clicked on that, you would hear an audio clip from the crowd. To use SoundCiteJS, you would just need to publish your sound files to the web. So consider SoundCloud or another option like that. Then import that URL into the SoundCite website. Edit the clip in SoundCite and then use the code it generates to embed it into your own web page or blog post. I'm also going to suggest podcasting. My favorite thing about podcasting is that it's a great way to reach people in a way no other media can. It's while they're driving their car or washing their dishes. And it's also a really great way to collaborate with other community members and organizations. It's also a neat way to complement, say, a physical exhibit in your physical space. I know it sounds daunting and expensive, but it's not. It can be as simple and free as you'd like to make it. So you can record via Skype, Zoom, or other recording systems. You can edit in Audacity, which is a free sound editing software, and then upload to a hosting site like SoundCloud or Anchor to create the RSS feed that will then submit the podcast to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And then, of course, if your podcast is successful, I'd recommend then investing maybe into some higher quality microphones or other software. But like I said, it can be free and super simple to just start. My next tool, the Oral History Metadata Synchronizer, also called OHMS. This is perhaps more of an accessibility tool than a storytelling tool, but it's worth exploring, especially if you're recording oral history interviews. This is a web-based app that syncs oral history audio and video clips to a written transcript. So users can search for keywords in the transcript or use the index that you see here on the screen to find a specific topic. and then connect directly to that corresponding moment in a recorded interview online. This does require some knowledge of XML coding. So keep that in mind. It can also be integrated though into Omeka. So if you're using Omeka to store some of your materials, your scans, your audio clips, this could be a good tool for you. You do have to request a free account to use. All right, lastly, I'm going to talk about social media because, all of these tools that I've just mentioned are great. It's definitely worth exploring, but if you have a website, if you have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you can tell your stories that way. So my first example here is for Facebook. And this example I pulled from Humans of New York. Some of you may be familiar with that. A photographer, Brandon Stanton, started walking out on the street and taking photographs of ordinary people he saw and posting those to Facebook. And he also generally posts an interview with those people. So it can be a really powerful way to show images and then text from the person in the images using their own voice. I also like the way he set up the navigation here, so you know where you are in the story. If you look on the very first part of the text, it says post 1 out of 12, so you know where you are in the story. Another option, if you're still using Twitter, I love this idea of a choose your own adventure. This is a fun, engaging way to tell a story, usually a fictional story, but with historical elements. In a medium that reaches so many people. This can be complex, so I recommend mapping out your story on paper first, maybe on note cards, so you can set up the plot line, and then you would build a tweet thread using tweets and replies, so folks can follow the story on Twitter. And another possibility for Twitter, for folks who maybe have historical diaries or journals, there are some organizations posting historical diaries and journals every day. So this example here is from Martha Ballard, a colonial midwife, folks might be familiar with. And this is just snippets of her diary. I believe the Massachusetts Historical Association is also doing the same thing with John Quincy Adams. And finally, your own website. This is an example from the Western North Carolina Historical Association, and they built a digital exhibit directly into their WordPress platform. We at the State Archives have discussed doing this too on our own WordPress blog, maybe using their carousel function to, which will basically create a slideshow of images with captions. So this can be a very simple tool that you may already have access to, and you can build it out on your website. So that concludes our roundup of some free tools for digital storytelling. I'd love to hear in the comments about the tools that you have used, what you thought about them. If I've missed one that you'd love to share, please do. Thank you very much.